On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, I think we can all agree that the 2022-23 Raptors are going to be pretty good, but what are we most excited about to watch with this team? We will dig into three things that we are each excited about on today's show with a wonderful guest. It's Freddie Rivas from the Confederacy of Dunks. We'll dig into it all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for being here.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1223 of Locked On Raptors for Tuesday, July the 26th, I think. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors, and you can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the podcast on all your favorite audio apps for free. You can also go to YouTube and watch the show in video form. See my mug every day, and you can subscribe there for free too. Just a big fat red subscribe button waiting to be pressed by the prospective subscriber to the channel, so please go and support the show that way. It's much appreciated, and also it helps stroke my ego, which is frankly the most important thing of all. Thanks as always for making us your first listen of the day, and without further ado, let's get to it on today's show. We are digging into three things that we are excited about to watch with the Toronto Raptors in the 2022-23 season. We have lists we have yet to reveal, and here with me to reveal said list is Freddie Rivas from the Confederacy of Dunks podcast, actor, comedian, man about town. Freddie, how's it going?
Pretty good, loving this off season, even though there's been a lot of Durant noise. I feel like I'm just pretty excited in general, but yeah, thanks for having me, dude.
Of course, man, and thank you for weathering through the COVID blues to jump on the podcast here. It's your flu game, it's your COVID game. It's going to be fantastic.
This is my like I was saying earlier. This is my Matt Devlin. I think it was Matt Devlin and Alvin Williams, and Matt Devlin was like, I need you to carry me, and Alvin Williams was like, I'm not ready. But yeah, you can hear it in my voice,
Yeah, but I don't know. It's coming through the edge of the headphones like a nice, sweet, smooth baritone. It's actually kind of nice. So
maybe this is my
looking
sexy
forward
voice.
to this. Yeah, it's like that episode of Friends where Phoebe becomes a sexy singer when she's sick. My stinky shoes. So yeah, let's go with the stinky shoes episode going on here.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Let's start here. We're going to go one by one, and we're going to reveal our list of three specific things that we are very excited to watch with the upcoming Toronto Raptors season, assuming the team that is intact right now will be the team that is intact on the first day of the season. I think the idea of a Kevin Durant trade is growing a little more murky as the days go on here, as other teams jump in the fray, and the Raptors have clearly drawn a line in the sand that they're not going to cross over in order to meet the Nets' demands. And so, barring some sort of settling on the Nets' end of things, I'm going forward assuming that Kevin Durant will not be a member of the Toronto Raptors, and I find that to be kind of exciting. It would have been cool to have KD on the team. If he is on the team at some point, it will be cool for sure. We'll talk about all that, but for now, I'm kind of all right to imagine what this team is going to look like with the core they have intact as they go into year number 2 of Vision 6-9. And Freddie, I will give you the floor. What is the first thing you are very excited to watch on this upcoming Toronto Raptors team?
Okay, the first thing for me, and I'm not the biggest stats guy, so I was looking for this, and I couldn't pull it up, so I wasn't sure how many games Siakam and Fred actually played together.
Right.
But in my memory of the season, I feel like Fred's best basketball was sort of in that early season period, like not necessarily without Siakam, but like his all-star push, and then he hurt his hip. And then Siakam really kind of like rounded into all NBA form, not necessarily after the All-Star break, but I feel like later in the season. And we never got to see those two play the peak of their new basketball together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting big vibes. Like, when, 1 year you had DeRozan in the All-Star game. The next year you had Kyle. And then the third year we got them both.
Yeah.
So this year I'm hoping that these two, can play together like the best basketball they've played all year at the same time. And, also their journey from the G League to being meaningful members of a championship team. I would just love to see that sort of crest, or hopefully go even further. But like this year anyways, I'm looking forward to it. And I think it's a real possibility that they both make the All-Star game.
Yeah, I think that's a really well taken point. I think I've kind of stated that I'm a little cooler on the idea of Fred making the All-Star game because I kind of think Scottie might come and take that spot. But it totally could happen because he was fantastic last season before he ended up getting hurt. And let me just see if I can find the data here for the lineups as to how often those guys actually did play together. Because again, it was not a whole lot. I think it's just sort of the general idea of wanting to see this team together as a whole, like kind of passes the smell test quite a bit. Even just like the main five-man lineups, right? Like the Fred,
Totally.
Trent, OG, Siakam, Barnes group. Yes, Siakam and Fred are kind of the backbone of that, but they played a total of 700 possessions together this season. That's not a lot of possessions, man. Like it's really
Really?
not. And yeah, I'm trying to, as I fiddle around here with NBA, with NBA.com, please forgive me, but it is kind of wild that, they went through a whole season having so little time with one another and yet still managed to win 48 games and managed to really coalesce by the end of the season while being kind of incomplete and not having all of their guys available to them. OG missing a ton of time. Trent missed some spots here and there. Fred obviously was just not himself after the All-Star break.
Hmm.
It just was a really impressive, I think, run for a team that probably, based on the quality of players who they were missing, based on the lack of depth they had, probably didn't have the right to be as good as they were and win 48 games and be the
Yeah.
sort of second half darlings that they were. But it all kind of came together because I think the sort of raw talent on hand with all of these guys is good enough that even missing a couple parts, they were able to kind of pull through it and continue on. It was really awesome to see. Just I got the lineup data here now. The most used lineup for the Raptors: Siakam, Van Vliet, Anunoby, Trent, Barnes played 345 minutes, 700 possessions, 21 games they were together, Freddie.
Wow.
21 games. It's nuts. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just bonkers.
Yeah, because for you, Fred was missing a lot of that. Like end of the season, we were like resting him and sort of flirting with like trying to keep him healthy for the playoffs, and like
Hmm
obviously he was just toast.
hmm
But for me, it's really about like Siakam playing his best basketball.
hmm
I feel like so many things for the Raptors fell in line. Just like whether it's like Precious being able to find a better role, OG not as like the first or second option, Scottie and Pascal playing so well together. And I think like the 1-2 of Fred and Pascal, like even just that play I love so much where Siakam's like just, beelining it up the court and
hmm
Fred's trailing and he just whips it back to Fred and Fred drops like a 30-foot three.
hmm
Like that's like one of the Raptors' best plays. So like
Yeah.
that alone, and I feel like that first chunk of the season sort of like marred a lot of the kind of chemistry. And like you said, it's amazing that they got it going like they did. And
hmm
think about starting a season like that it's exciting.
Yeah, and so the number of games that Siakam and Fred played together this year was 53 of 82, which, was maybe more than I expect. No, I guess they like Fred didn't miss a ton of time. He was just busted.
Right.
It wasn't like he missed like
Yeah.
a month of time, right? So it makes sense. But when you think about the sort of segments of the season, Pascal misses those first 10 games, comes back, takes him like a month to really kind of round into form. It's not really until like the end of December where he hits like, oh my God, Pascal is like
Yep.
the best Pascal we've ever seen level. And then you get like a month of Fred and Pascal playing at sort of the peaks of their powers. They go through that run where they sort of run roughshod over the teams that they were kind of competing with in the Eastern
Hmm.
Conference in that sort of stretch of 8 games against the Bulls, the Hornets, the Hawks, and the Heat, where they go 7-1. And then
Yep.
after that, the All-Star break comes, and Fred is not the same for the rest of the season. So really, it was like a month that we saw those two guys working together, and it was maybe the best month the team had all season. So it does stand to reason that with some health, with some better minutes management, those guys together should be a pretty fun combo. Let me quickly give you my number one thing I'm excited about, Freddie.
Let's
It's
do it.
pretty chalk. It's watching Scottie freaking Barnes play basketball again. I
Yes,
know it's
yes.
easy, but holy God, I think we have forgotten almost how freaking good Scottie Barnes was. 15, 8, and 4. I'm rounding up for effect on those rebound and assist totals, but that's fine. It's mathematically sound. He was incredible and well beyond our expectations. What is the thing that you are most keying in on with Scottie this coming season? Is there like a specific aspect of his game you're really excited by? For me, it's not so specific. It's just like all of it, because watching him sort of grow and learn throughout last season was such a satisfying thing to see. I kind of just want to see that again, but like a souped up version of it. But is there a specific thing you're kind of keying in on with Scottie? Is a particularly exciting element or wrinkle to his game?
I don't know if it's like if I would say exciting, but I'm super interested in his shooting. I think we
Right,
saw
right.
in Game 6 of the Philly series that Doc Rivers was like, you got to let this guy shoot. He's too good at everything else. And
Hmm.
to Scottie's credit, he did shoot. I feel like he went like 1 for 7 from three
Yep,
in
yep.
that game or something like that. And that to me is so different than like a Ben Simmons or someone who's like kind of shriveling up like in the moment sort of thing. And I think, yeah, like Scottie just yeah, I think you said it so well. Like everything about him, his energy, his leadership, just his like he has that amazing, obviously he's, it feels weird to compare him to Magic Johnson, but he has that
Magic
sort of
Johnson literally did it, so I think it's
right.
allowed.
But he's got that like I'm a super nice guy, but also like I'm gonna steal the ball from LeBron, look back at him and dunk.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
gonna steal the ball from KD, look down at him as he's on the ground. Like, I don't know. Scottie's just he definitely I don't know, the comparisons are just crazy for Scottie, but he's really giving me like Vince Carter style energy. Like he's
Yeah.
that exciting of a player.
Yeah, I think I saw someone mention it, maybe in the comments of the YouTube channel during the season last year, that Scottie Barnes is like a combination of Giannis and Jokic, which sounds insane and
Yeah,
probably is insane,
it
but
is. Yeah,
also
but
when you squint, it's like, well, there's a little bit of it, like the cool passes and also the fact that he's bigger and stronger than everybody else. Like there's a blueprint there. It's not going to become that. He's not going to become the last 3 MVPs, last 4 MVPs or whatever, but I mean, it's cool to think about. Someone's got to become the best player in the league at some point. Maybe it's him. Uh,
totally.
the thing I'm specifically excited about, if there's one little element, is the rest of the team getting wise to that Scottie like sees the floor better than everybody else and like
Hmm.
being ready for his insane passes and his no looks and his like behind the back stuff and just the stuff that like the fastballs that come in at like 90 miles an hour that last season guys just seemed kind of unprepared for. I feel like a little bit more time playing with him, a little bit more understanding. It's got to be kind of like what it was for, anyone who played with like Steve Nash or any sort of transcendent passer. You have to realize, oh, this guy just like knows what I'm doing better than I even know what I'm doing. And there's got to be like an adjustment period there. I'm pretty excited for more conversions of ridiculous, outrageous, overzealous Scottie Barnes passes, and that is something that's like keeping me going throughout the entire offseason. Just thinking about, oh, Chris Boucher knows when those passes are coming now and is now
Yes. Yeah.
dunking instead of duffing it out of bounds. That's pretty rad to me.
Yeah.
We're going to continue on here, Freddie. We each have two more things that we're very excited to watch on this upcoming Raptors team that we're going to get to. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar, who are making the best tasting protein bars in the world. And if you haven't tried them yet, the Built Bar Puffs are incredible. And you're depriving yourself of one of the greatest things in the world, which is a delicious, indulgent treat that is actually good for you and you don't have to feel bad about. And they have a brand new flavor. It's the cookie dough chunk puff. They're light, they're chewy, they got real cookie dough chunks in there, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. You get all the joys of eating cookie dough straight out of the tube without the hassle of making it, without the risk of salmonella, all of that good stuff. It is truly fantastic. You have only 160 calories in your typical bar, 15 grams of protein as well. It's collagen protein too, which absorbs into your body better. It is much better for you, and it's going to give you a lot of health benefits while making you feel like you're being indulgent, while actually not. You're maybe like half the calories of a typical candy bar, a fraction of the sugar as well, and it's going to feel like you're cheating. It's great for a late night snack. You can ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built Bar Puff. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. This is the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Go get yourself some cookie dough chunk puffs. All right, we continue on here with your first listen of the day with Freddie Rivas of the Confederacy of Dunks podcast, and also the Pickup, a Toronto Podcast Award nominated WNBA podcast. Freddie, I forgot to congratulate for that off the
Thank
top,
you.
but well done, sir. Well done to you and Catherine, our dear pal, as well on this here podcast. Go listen to the Pickup, baby.
Thank
All
you.
right, Freddie. We got more stuff that we're excited about to get into. Give me your number two thing you are very excited to watch for this coming Raptors season.
Okay, number 2 is Gimmick Ball. I absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just like I think we were already doing it, right? And then we got the Thad trade,
Hmm.
and it was like, okay, this is full on. So we got
Hmm.
Precious first off the bench, then we got Boucher, then we got Thad, and then
Hmm.
now you throw Otto in there, and it's just like it's wild. Like I feel like we're leaning so hard into this. I know that obviously like Fred and Gary are the exceptions to it, but
Right.
I just love any version of like a stubborn Bobby or Masai excites me because I'm like, these guys are geniuses, and Nurse too, So like, it's just this idea that I've been frustrated before watching the Raptors scramble D,
Hmm.
but it's sort of like, and even like we were talking about like that 8 or 9 game run,
Hmm.
just like running Fred into the ground, all these kinds of things. Like I feel like that was all. It's all been practice that's been leading up to having a team that fits this identity that the
Hmm.
Raptors are going for. And I feel like we're kind of there. Like, our first 5 guys off the bench are going to be 6'9" or 6'8", 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah.
And they're not just like, they're not all like Kem Birches. Like they have like a totally different skill set.
Hmm.
Is the Precious 3 real? I don't know. It looked good. But I feel like Boucher's really settled into his like hustle style bench, offense and defense.
Hmm.
And a guy like Otto, he started for the Warriors in the finals, right? And
Yeah.
in the playoffs. So he's just going to be perfect for this team. Like he's going to be, you're talking about the Scottie passes. Like Scottie's going to find him open all the time. Like his main play is a catch and shoot. So I think we're going to overwhelm teams.
Hmm.
I also feel like, we might run into some of the same issues of like half court offense and like foul heavy team or whatever. But it's just like it's a further step in this, in this team that I think some people would see as redundant. Some people
Hmm.
would be like, oh, we need that center. But, and we got Koloko, but I think, we'll see like where he's at. But I think to me, it's exciting that we're doing this sort of like almost like Oakland A's Moneyball this new version of basketball. And it's not
Yeah.
totally new, right? The Warriors were all like 6'7", 6'8". But I think that like the way we're doing it, this offensive rebounding, everything is just kind of new. And like the basketball nerd in me is just totally excited.
Yeah, I think that it was like the real joy of last season's team, right? Was this sort of novel concept coming in and seeing the flaws of it and seeing maybe the chinks in the armor, but also seeing like what it was capable of. When they were at their best, they were just like a swarming mess of a team to try to play against. And it was awesome to behold. And when they really got sort of into that positive feedback loop where, they're forcing turnovers, they're running down your throat, they're defending like maniacs and forcing
Hmm.
more turnovers. It just kind of felt like it was sort of like an avalanche of Raptors basketball kind of washing over you. And it was really, really sweet. And I think, the interesting thing about all of that this season is like, how do they change things up a little bit? How do they sort of alter now that they have a little bit more shooting on hand? Do they sort of
Hmm.
tone down the aggressiveness on defense because maybe there's a pathway to a better half court offense with the emergence of Pascal as an offensive hub and with Scottie Barnes likely taking a creation leap and things like that? Does that help them sort of play a bit more of a chill style? Maybe just switch on defense as opposed to trying to,
Hmm.
break up every single pass? It,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I don't know, how it'll all come together, but I do know for sure that I think, in individual seasons, I think it's been sort of this sort of thing with Nick Nurse where people are like, wow, this guy's just so stuck in his ways. He refuses to change things up because, he's got this
Right.
certain, plan. I don't think that's true because every year they seem to have sort of gone into something different. And if you go back to the championship season in 2018, the whole thing with that team was they could beat you any way possible. They could beat you with Kawhi, without Kawhi. They could beat you with a
Yep.
switching defense. They could beat you with an over aggressive defense. They could beat you with a drop defense. Like they were so versatile in the way that they could beat teams. And Nick Nurse has had to coach to such different teams over the course of his time with the team. I really think that he doesn't get enough credit for being maneuverable in terms of his schemes. Whereas
Totally.
maybe if you're just looking at the silo of a single season, you'll say, wow, this guy like really does not have many ideas, huh? He just kind of does the same thing over and over again. But if you sort of take the grand scope, like they've done all sorts of different stuff and been pretty successful at all of it. And the results outside of the Tampa season, where again the team getting COVID was the reason that they kind of fell
Yeah.
apart as they were ascending the East as they got hit by COVID, having just beaten a bunch of really good teams. I do think, if you sort of take the grand scheme, like big 10,000-foot view of Nick Nurse, the dude's a really good coach who can kind of coach to the talent he has on hand. And I think with a more sort of versatile set of skills on hand this year, we could see a little bit more in terms of ways they approach different games and sort of altering the game plan to suit the matchup, as opposed to last year where it really felt like, all right, we're going to school you in this system and we're going to do it the entire year, even if it burns us, just because we got to learn it. So I'm really curious to see how the gimmick ball evolves into maybe something with like multiple gimmicks layered in. It's
Yeah.
like gimmick lasagna, if you will.
Gimmick lasagna. Yes.
My second thing I'm excited for is, and I just mentioned when the Raptors were beating all those good teams in the Tampa season before things kind of fell apart. I'm excited to watch them go against the heavy hitters of the East. They were really good against them last year too, right? Like they beat Milwaukee. I think they swept Milwaukee. I know Giannis missed a game or two of the ones they played, but they had Milwaukee's number. They obviously
Yep.
had the two massive games against the Sixers late in the season. They looked really good against Philly. Boston, Boston kind of had their number. They beat them once or twice. One game they didn't have any players available for it, so Boston was really good. That's just the kind of way it is. But the Heat, they played really well. Even go to like the Western Conference and the heavy hitters up there, they played those teams quite strong as well.
Mhm.
Beating the sort of back to back in Denver and Phoenix as sort of the main example, winning both of those games. They were 28 and 22 last year against teams over 500, despite starting off the season not very hot in that department.
Wow.
And I'm really curious to see how they sort of match up against those heavy hitters, because I think everyone would agree they're probably a tier below the contender class in the East, but they've had a propensity for slugging with the best of them. And that to me is such a fun little wrinkle of the season. Every time you get to kind of see those measuring stick games, those
Totally.
ones should be a ton of fun. Where are you at on the idea of them sort of going up against the class of the East and just being excited to see how it all unfolds?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited. I feel like, I'm excited. I mean, I don't enjoy the Sixers, but I'm excited by the moves they've made. But I don't really have the Sixers in a class above the Raptors. I kind of have
Interesting.
the Bucks and the Celtics sort of like significantly better than the Raptors. And I feel
Hmm.
like the Raptors, and I'm not talking about the playoffs here, but as far as the regular season and measuring sticks, I just feel like we're heading into like a regular season juggernaut style
Mm.
Raptors season. And I feel like the Heat and the Sixers, just because of their age and Embiid and a bunch of stuff, I feel like the Raptors are kind of like similar to them.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see how they can like contend with those teams. The Warriors. I hate the Celtics, but very afraid of them. The Brogdon trade pissed me off, and Ime Udoka's a great coach, and I feel like the Celtics sort of are really good at punishing the Raptors like over aggression. So
Hmm.
that's probably the team I'm the most excited to, I guess, like see how we match up against.
Right.
And I think Tatum's obviously ascended, but I feel like the Siakam Tatum thing for me is still exciting. Like I still
Yeah.
want Siakam to somehow best Tatum. Maybe he can't. Maybe he's not on that level. But I do think Siakam is probably closer to Tatum than people give him credit for. Like I do feel like Siakam's like a top 15 player in the NBA,
Hmm.
and or right there, if not like I
Made all
don't think
NBA.
he made.
It's
Yeah,
in the
right.
pudding, man. Yeah.
Exactly. Like he made all NBA. I think he's often treated like he's a top like 30 player, and I just don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see those coaching battles too. And like you said, like, earlier, as far as like us beating teams in different ways,
Hmm.
if Boston is punishing us for being overly aggressive, like, do we have a wrinkle? Is there a way to sort of like throw them off?
Hmm.
If Time Lord is basically blocking everything that comes his way, do we have a player that can kind of like get him in foul trouble or challenge that like paint dominance?
Mm-hmm.
Like how the Raptors sort of square up against the very best. It's time to start thinking about it, because I think we're heading into that type of a year. I feel like there could be parts of the season where people, they start to, in the same way that we were like, we're going to beat Philly for sure. I could see people being like, we're going to win the championship. And I just don't feel that. I feel like we're going to have some playoff struggles, but
Sure.
those games are going to be, just echoing your point. Like those games are going to be the big kind of like measuring sticks.
Totally. And again, the track record is there. They've been very good against good teams for a while now. And, if you couple that, like if they can replicate, the 28 and 22 they had against plus 500 teams last year, and also kind of get back to what they used to be known for, which was beating the tar out of bad teams, which was not a thing they did super well last year. They were only
Yes.
20 and 12 against under 500 teams, which is a good record, but like there were seasons where they were like 25 and 2 against sub 500 teams and stuff like
Totally.
that in recent history. That I think will sort of pad the win total a little bit more, even if maybe there is a bit of a coming back to earth with the number of really good teams there are. Maybe they go more 500-ish against 500 or better teams, but they just beat the hell out of the bad teams. Either way, the games against the heavy hitters I think will be appointment television, because this Raptors team gives those teams problems. You mentioned the Celtics. Like Jason Tatum has often said, the Raptors are the team that gives him the most trouble. Has said that the 2020 bubble series against the Raptors is like the toughest series he ever played. Like there's, as much as it seems like the Celtics maybe have the Raptors number, they very clearly respect what the Raptors do and are a little bit fearful of what they do, and have said as much out loud. So
Totally.
I'm fascinated to see the sort of cream of the East go against one another. And I think by the end of the season, we'll probably look at the Raptors being closer to that contender tier, if not totally in it, than we will say sort of like the 6th through whatever tier of the Eastern Conference for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
They're going to be good, man. I'm really bullish on this team in a way I haven't been bullish on a Raptors team in a very, very
Me
long time.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to win a lot of games.
It feels like, I was laughing at like the Vegas odds thing, because I was like, man,
where are they losing 4 wins from last year? Like,
I
don't
insane
get it
to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I guess it's like, knock on wood, hopefully nothing happens, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna do better than 48 wins. Like I'm almost at the point where I'd be disappointed if we didn't crack 50.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, you'd be like, yeah, that they're. What was the point you just said? I had something to go off of it that my brain just totally melted.
Oh, just yeah, I'd be disappointed if we didn't crack 50, and like Vegas putting us at 44 is sort of it's like, I guess maybe that's to entice more betting, but like I don't know. I feel like that's like it's one of the sillier things I've seen last year, and I will say I finally, with a couple buddies, put my money where my mouth was, and last year I won some money on the over.
Hell yeah. To your point, the brain came back and started working again. You mentioned like things could happen. Like all the things happened last year to this team. They missed guys.
Totally.
They had fans out of the building for half the season. Like a lot of stuff happened to potentially suppress the win total, and they still won 48 games. So
a weird fire.
A weird fire, their point guard becoming rubble, like it all happened, and they still won a whole lot of games. So yeah, I am extremely bullish, and again, those games against the top teams in the East are going to be awesome measuring sticks to watch. We're going to continue on and get to our final things we're excited about this coming Raptors season. But first, just a reminder, you can check out Locked On Blue Jays every single day over on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube, as well as Ben Schulman, son of Dan, and Matt Bonaparte take you through every single day of the Blue Jays season and detail all of the embarrassment they lay on teams like the Boston Red Sox and the vaccine-averse St. Louis Cardinals. They're doing great, so go check out Locked On Blue Jays. All right, Freddie, let's close this thing out. We got one more thing each on our lists of things we're excited about. We haven't overlapped just yet, which is fun. What is your thing number 3?
Okay. We almost did, because I was going to pick Scottie, and I was like, okay, he'll come up. Like, so I'm glad you picked him. But, mine's sort of echoing some of the points that I've made earlier, but I feel like, I don't necessarily think we're going to win 59 games, but this team is really giving me bench mob vibes.
Okay.
I think that, we're just going to be a team that sort of doesn't let up from the starters to the bench. And maybe that sort of also speaks to our starters not being as high level as some of the other starters in the league.
Sure.
But, I really feel like whether it's managing Fred's minutes more because we have more depth, or, whether it's like Thaddeus Young being a more integrated part of the team, having another shooter in Otto, I just feel like we've solved a lot of our problems that, Nurse has dealt with. And, to your point earlier, like I was one of the people who I feel like was a little bit frustrated at how much Nurse played, Fred, and kind of running our guys into the ground. But, him and Masai sort of spoke at different points of the year about this year not mattering. Like, I mean, it mattered, but it was sort of like training for the future.
The regular season was their playoffs in a lot of ways, because they knew that it was more likely than not they weren't going to go on a super deep run. So why not get the reps in now?
And that's exactly what they did. And I feel like, once you get past the disappointment of the Philly series, which was also riddled with injuries and like a bunch of different stuff, Gary having the flu, like there was a lot of like unlucky shit that happened. But like, this team, I just think, also to your point about beating up on bad teams, I feel like we might finally have a team that is able to like route some teams, and we might have more blowouts and like get Fred and Pascal some organic rest where it's not like we're grinding to get every win.
Sure.
I just think we're just built with a lot of depth. Obviously we don't like to talk about it, but we don't talk about Bruno, but like I feel like that way with Tampa, right? You think about guys like Matt Thomas and Stanley Johnson and DeAndre Bembry and Aaron Baines, and it's like, could they make this roster? And I don't
Probably
think
not.
so, right? Like
Stanley Johnson, noted fourth best player on the Lakers. Good for him. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I'm already sad at like the idea that the Raptors might be cutting some guys that I really like.
Right.
I don't know who that's going to be, and like, but yeah, we're just really, I don't want to say we're like the deepest team in the league, but I think we're starting to have like intense depth, which also I think we're seeing reflected in the Kevin Durant trade talk. I think a big part of it is that we have a lot of different contracts. We have a lot of good players. No one's overpaid or whatever, which is always a weird term to describe players making money. But we have a lot of quality players, and Scottie is crazy, and OG wants a bigger role, which is like, great, buddy, do it. I'm excited for it.
Go seize it, man. Yeah.
Seize the day. Like, and a guy like Koloko can come along like as slow as he needs to. I just think that, it's giving me big bench mob vibes where, I think we're going to just really have good chemistry too.
I love it. As a big fan of those bench mob teams, I would be very, very happy for a bench mob renaissance, 100%, with Otto Porter being the tall CJ Miles who doesn't do raps. We're going to, I got my last thing I'm really excited for, and it actually kind of goes into the idea of the team not having to sort of exhaust everything to win every game in, close fashion down the stretch. But that sort of fact of last season did create some pretty interesting results, specifically as it related to crunch time and how the Raptors performed there, where they were one of the best teams in the league. They had a 112.3 offensive rating, 7th in the league in crunch time, which is per NBA.com, games within 5 points under 5 minutes in the fourth quarter. 102.8 defensive rating, 8th best in the league there. They were 7th best in overall net rating in crunch time, plus 9.5. They were 26 and 19 in games that came down to clutch moments. So lots of games that were in this situation, and they played the third most clutch minutes of any team in the league, 181, which is a lot. Hopefully, they don't have to play that many this time around because there's some blowouts worked in, because they did not blow out a lot of teams last season. But I do wonder what I'm excited about is to see how real all of that was, because there's now a growing track record going back to 2019-20 where the Raptors were an unbelievable monster in crunch time, where they had the second best offense, the third best defense. They were a plus 20 per 100 possessions in crunch time. Like, they were just unstoppable. The only team better than them in crunch time was the Chris Paul, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Dennis Schroeder Thunder, which is kind of hilarious and awesome. But with that, I think there's a growing track record that Pascal Siakam centered offenses can score in the clutch. It was why I was pretty confident that things were going to carry over to the postseason pretty well for Siakam last season, and they did. He was really good for the most part in that series against Philly, despite the difficult circumstances with little shooting around him and Gary Trent being out and Scottie missing time. He was still clearly the best player for the team in that series by a mile. And I'm really curious to see if we can kind of get a little bit more proof of concept that crunch time and sort of like chips down basketball is a place where this Raptors team can kind of thrive. It's a little bit maybe against conventional wisdom because they're not a great half court team sort of in the general flow of things, but I think because they have a lot of isolation talent with Siakam, with Scottie Barnes, because they have a lot of options, because they had, 5 guys who could hit a game winner at any point last season, and that happened at various times throughout the year where OG, Fred, Scottie, Pascal, who's the other guy? OG, Fred, Gary, all those guys at some point had a big moment late in the game. I think for me, I'm fascinated to see if that can carry over into next season. We know crunch time is always a small sample, just 181 minutes. That's not a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if there's a bit of a growing trend here that could carry over to next season and the Raptors perform once again very well in the clutch, which again, I think offers a lot of hints as to how the team might perform in the sort of gauntlet of the playoffs. Where are you at with the idea of them being a crunch time monster? Are you sort of a believer in that they can be based on the construction of the team, or are you maybe sort of in wait and see mode after a season where they were very good, but this doesn't really, it's kind of like bullpens in baseball where it doesn't always translate year to year.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of good points, and I feel like Siakam he's just such an unconventional player. His rise to greatness is really hard to track. He's so unlike many, all NBA players, before him. And I think one thing that I feel like when it comes to crunch time, people are sort of, it's perception based. And I feel like a lot of crunch time is sort of stuck on this idea of like the fadeaway and who can hit this like long bomb shot. And I feel like Siakam does a lot of flicks, a lot of hooks, a lot of just sort of like making things happen. And as someone who's watched the finals run over and over and over, you can just rack up the Siakam crunch plays, whether it's like a meaningful steal against the Bucks to close out like the conference finals, or like literally the game or the finals winning shot over Draymond Green. Siakam is very clutch, but I feel like there's this idea that, I think clutch has to come in a certain way. And, there's like, Dame time sort of vibe where we might not be like that. Maybe Gary's like that, but I feel like even Scottie has a lot of that energy where he can just sort of go get a bucket.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think the Raptors are clutch also on defense. So I'm totally with you. There is this energy that kind of puts the Raptors. I mean, I even said it, like they're struggling in the half court, but they can execute at a very, very high level. And I expect them to be a really good clutch team.
Yeah, the point you made about the defense is one I meant to make and forgot to. So thank you for being better at my job than me. But
never, Sean.
It is a really good point. That 2019-20 season where they were a monster, where they were a 60-plus win pace team, like the two cruxes of their crunch time success were the Lowry Siakam pick and roll, whatever way you wanted to run it, 4-1-1-4, and the fact that their defense was impenetrable. They were so good and ruined so many games for other teams just by not even letting them get a potential game tying or winning shot off. And I think like the idea of a defense being a weapon in crunch time is kind of slept on because we love buckets and we love buzzer beaters and all this stuff. But the number of times the Raptors have won games in recent seasons just by being just monstrous defensively, it's like the 6th player they have on the floor in addition to the 5 guys who can hit a game winner at any time. So yeah, I am really, like, again, really bullish on this team, and I grow more bullish day by day. The numbers kind of all point to this team's going to be a monster to deal with next season, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. With that, I think we are going to round out today's show. Freddie, thank you so much for popping on. It was great to have you. Thank you for talking through the throat of a COVID afflicted fellow and doing a fantastic job with it. Where can people check out all your great stuff?
No problem, Sean. I love this pod, and yeah, this is my flu game, man. I feel like I made it, but yeah, check me out on Twitter at Freddie Rivas, but my podcast on Raptors Republic is at Confederacy of Dunks, and also check out my nominated for Canadian Podcast
Say it
Award.
loud, baby.
Nominate. Actually, maybe I can't scream. But yeah, the Pickup WNBA podcast, where me and Catherine Niker from Buckets and Tea, our approach is learning about the WNBA, and it's so fun. It's such an incredible league. I think if you're a sports nerd, it's amazing. If you love personal stories, it's amazing. So yeah, check us out. We just got a Twitter, and we started doing the socials for the WNBA pod at the Pickup Pod. So yeah, check it out. And Sean, thank you so much, dude.
Of course, man. It was great having you, and it was great to have all you listeners out there hanging out for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Freddie will be back as we are going to talk about a great Raptors heartbreak in the series I'm recording to drop while I'm away on my honeymoon in August. So you have that to look forward to. It's going to be very sad, maybe the worst one that I've ever at least seen in person.
It's going to be rough.
I won't spoil it too much, but either way, that you have to look forward to. More Freddie on the pod in the coming weeks. You can find this podcast, of course, on all your favorite podcast apps, free to subscribe both on YouTube and on the audio platforms. And huge thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Go make your second listen of the day Locked On NBA, as they are covering all the happenings, Jaylen Brown and the Celtics and the Kevin Durant thing and everything else going on. Go check out Locked On NBA today on your favorite podcast apps, and as always on YouTube as well. And with that, we'll round it out there. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.